2022 meeting for the Franklin Board of Education. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
Here.
Mrs. Sapersky.
Here.
Dr. Khan.
Here.
Dr. Beer.
Here.
Mr. Sprague.
Here.
We are all present.
Thank you, and the meeting has been properly posted. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, Southwood Glen Elementary School presentation. Dr. Mowbray, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dr. Mowbray. I'm the principal at Southwood Glen, and it is a privilege to be here tonight and to showcase some of our second grade work. Our excellent second grade teaching staff is here, as well as 3 special second grade students who are going to explain some of their writing. So I'd like to introduce Mrs. Haviland, Mrs. Lammers, and Mrs. Beardsley, and then our student speakers, Cassie, Cora, and Grayson. Alright, so we are excited to be here to share a little bit of second grade writing with you. We have the opportunity this year to kind of pilot the newer versions of the reading that are coming out. So we chose to do that, and I've seen some really different writing this year than we've seen in previous years in a good way, like a lot of different, really good growth from within the first unit. So wanted to share that. We just finished our first unit last Friday, so we are fresh off of our writing celebration. So I'm going to share some of those with you today. Oh, perfect. I don't know if this can go in there, but
That's me.
okay. So our writing is broken up. Our first unit was on personal narratives, so true stories that happened to them, and we're trying to make these small moments, like really zoom in and tell lots of details about a small moment. In first grade, they tried to kind of tell my whole weekend is kind of their books, and now we're picking what's the one exciting thing that happened and filling the pages about that. Our writing is broken into 3 bends. Something that was a little different in these abbreviated or these updated versions. They broke the bends up a little bit different. So the first bend, or the first chunk of lessons, was really on teaching them what is the genre, how exactly does this genre get written, and writing a lot of books quickly. So trying to get like 5 to 8 books written just to get the ideas out and figure out how does this kind of writing go. The second bend focused a lot on revising. I feel like it previously kind of been mixed in. Some it was like write a little bit, revise a little bit, write a little bit, revise a little bit. For this one, the second bend gave them a number of ways to go back and revise those 5 to 8 stories they'd already written. And some of them were adding talking, adding feelings, adding details, changing the beginnings and the endings, working on the spelling and punctuation. So that's kind of all in bend 2. And then bend 3, the last little bit, tries to take all of that, where they start writing new stories again, but trying to use all of those strategies we learned along the way. And we use a mentor text and kind of dive into that and say, okay, what did this author do that we could try in our writing too? Okay. The first piece that they're doing, that first bend, is a lot on drafting. So it's kind of following their writing process. So the anchor chart that we had, the kids, we kind of worked. Each post-it note out there would be like a different lesson and a different day. So trying to get them to draft all those stories very quickly. So some things we talked about was trying to think of a big feeling that you had. A time you were really embarrassed. One time where you were really scared. A time you were nervous. So we start with that big feeling, and we titled all of our books "One Time When I," so that we could really focus on that zooming in piece. Not one time when I went to Florida, but one time when I fell off my bike and broke my arm. Like a really specific moment. And from there, we worked on planning it out, putting feelings on every page. How did you feel across that story? And then working on sticking with that important part. So don't end with, and then I went to bed, but ending right when that moment ended. Talked about the different feelings and then the just right words. So trying to get rid of happy, sad, and mad, terrified or miserable or ecstatic. And do that through a bunch of books. Okay. And then Veg 2 was all about revising. So you can see in the post-its, we really worked on adding more talking, action, and feelings to each page, so that each page had more than. And then I hit a rock with my bike. And then I hit a rock with my bike, and I felt the handlebars shake, and I started getting scared or nervous. And then that kind of goes along with don't just tell the feelings, but show them. Not say I was scared, but like my heart was pounding. I was feeling so nervous in my belly, something like that. And then really slowing down the action and telling it bit by bit. Then revising the beginnings and endings. So we started with one day, one I, and then we want to change it to have the action talking or describing the setting. So one hot summer day, I was outside sweating, instead of one day I was outside. So kind of adding that more interesting beginning to kind of capture your reader's attention, and then kind of the same with the ending with the action talk or a big feeling that can kind of wrap up the whole story. So instead of just ending the story and saying the end, it's, I felt so proud of myself that day, or ending with a really big feeling to kind of leave something with your reader when they're done reading the book.
So now we have our second graders to show you how they made these revisions that we're talking to you guys about in their writing. So Cora is going to come up here, you can stand up. And Cora, can you tell me, so I'm looking up here at your revisions, and I see that you have a star in the corner right there, and then you have a star on that paper right there. Can you tell me why you did that?
Well, when I was writing the book, I remembered when I was writing it, I had to think for other people in the story. So I didn't want them to just turn the page. I wrote a star on the page and a star on the revision, so that they knew that they should do that chunk of the writing before they turn.
Yeah, so that chunk that she's talking about, it's kind of hard to see there, is this here. So she wanted her reader to make sure that when the star was there, that then they went to this chunk next. So can you tell me, it says that you were working on don't just tell the feelings, show them. Can you show us how you did that, or tell us how you did that?
Well, first I just told the feelings by saying I was happy, excited, and scared. But then I added everything up to the microphone, like my constant sweat. And I also added like when
Do you want to read it? This part?
also added like I was biting my nails. Like I said like no, I said quietly biting my nails.
Yeah, so you're really showing us there with the word quietly and biting my nails and palms were sweating, not just telling us I was excited and nervous like you had it the first time. So can you tell me, I also see another revision up there where you have a big cross up. Can you tell us about that? Why did you put that big cross up there?
I wanted to describe the setting. So before I just started the story by like showing the word karaoke. So and then I crossed that off and then I added what the word was and then continued.
All right, and this is my good friend Cassie, and she is like a rock star reviser. So Cassie was writing a story about riding her bike and crashing her bike, right? And she, you'll see up here, she has her revisions as well. The one near the top is what she had first, and then how she kind of revised it there. So she added like this whole flag, covered up her old words and added new blank lines over it to fix that up. So we kind of put those revisions. So Cassie, when your first try at your page, you had up there it said, yes, your mom said yes, you could go. So you went to get my bike. And then why did you decide to totally get rid of that and cover it up? Yeah, so instead of I went to get my bike, what did you put instead?
So I crossed the street to get my bike.
had more than that were the steps that got her on the bike. And then another one I saw that she edited, the second one, she crossed off the words, "if I could," and then changed it to some dialogue. Why did you get rid of that sentence and change it to dialogue instead?
Because instead of telling you what I said, I wrote it how I actually like.
Yeah, what you actually said. So the first try said, and then I asked my mom if I could ride my bike. So that was a strategy we learned. Don't say if you could ride your bike, but say, "Mom, can I ride my bike?" Really turn that piece into the actual words you said, not just telling them that you said something. Awesome. So some of the big revisions that Cassie did. Thanks, Cassie.
And then we have Mr. Grayson. And Grayson worked really, really hard at revising his beginnings and his endings to really start with that action setting or dialogue. Action setting, or action, dialogue, or a big feeling. So Grayson started with what we taught them. One day my friend wanted me to teach him how to do the monkey bars. Then Grayson had the great idea to start doing what in your writing. You switched it to
Hot day on the playground. My friend wanted to know how to do the monkey bar.
So instead of one day my friend wanted to know how to do the monkey bars, it was one hot day on the playground. So telling us what the weather was like and what the setting was so that the reader can picture it a little bit more. And then Grayson also worked super, super hard at revising his ending. So his ending I'll let you read it. So you can see up there on the bottom picture, his ending originally was kind of the start to another story. Then we had lunch recess when that didn't happen in the recess that he taught his friend how to do monkey bars. So it could have been the start of a whole new story. And Grayson realized that and instead decided to change it to
I felt really happy to teach my friend something that was so fun to I am going on the monkey bars again, I told Kelso.
So instead of ending it in a way that could really be the beginning of a new story, it was, I felt really happy that I taught my friend something, and then ending it with a dialogue of, hey, I'm going to go do it again. And so really kind of wrapping up that story nice and neat instead of potentially having a whole new beginning to another story with at lunch recess when that wasn't the small moment that we were doing it on.
All right, so then we get to, after we do our revisions, we get into the final stage of our writing process, which is editing. So, excuse me, once we are editing, we show this anchor chart that you see up here. We ask our writers to pick a focus because there's so many different ways that you can edit your writing. We're looking for this, the language conventions component here. So talking about spelling, capitals, and punctuation. So we first ask them to pick a focus. After they pick their focus, then we go into rereading. They find the places, they fix it, and then they do it again. So if they chose spelling, they would go back the next time through and look at punctuation. They'd go back again, and then they look for capitals. So they're really rereading this piece 3 times before they start a new piece. Or in this case, these writers, the pieces that they were showing you were ones that they chose to publish because we've reached an end of the unit. So we always publish one piece. We choose one from all of the pieces that we write throughout the unit to publish and then celebrate. So I believe on the next slide is an example of Cassie's writing. So you can see, yeah, you don't have to talk. You can see up here, she was with the word started. She was going through, and at first she had the word started written out S-A-T-E-D. You can see where she was editing, and she looked it over, and she thought, ooh, that doesn't really look right. I'm going to try it again. So she crossed it off, and then she wrote it again, and she got closer, but she realized something didn't look right again. So she crossed it off, and then she got to that started written correctly there, in that third try. So you can tell that she was persevering. She was trying again and again until it looked right. You can see also in there where she has some changes made with quotation marks. Her punctuation is there. So this whole process we go through, like I said, 3 times, looking at a different lens or a different focus each time. And then once we're done with editing, these are 2 examples of what published pieces look like. So you can see Cora's published piece. This was her first one with all the revisions on there. You can see the flaps, the cross-offs, all of that really wonderful thinking she was doing as a writer, all those changes she was making when she was revising, and then that is her final piece right there. So instead of the flap, she squeezed it all in on that first page, as that beautiful beginning written there, and took all of those things that we learned in the process of writing and added it into her published piece. And then I believe the other piece is this
Final draft of that page she shared. So instead of having all those flaps and cross-outs and 3 ways of spelling it, they do a nice clean version with all those changes right in one copy. Yep.
And that's that one published piece. So they don't do that with every single piece of writing that they produce in the unit. They just pick one at the end to rewrite, add color, detail, all of that. So, and then we celebrate. Usually we do something pretty fun to celebrate. This time we went into the library with all 3 second grade classes, and we read our writing to each other. So that is
Well, thank you very much for presenting. We would love to have everybody like come up front, and Ms. Landcor has our camera. We could take a picture of the group. Ms. Moray, if you want to come up with them.
Just stand in front of us, yeah. Good job, you guys.
That's good.
Look at the back of that one, the end. Bye.
Bye.
Don't keep it. Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Really good job, kids.
Good job, you guys.
All right, item 5, Wisconsin Association of School Boards Business Honor Roll Recognition. Mr. Thompson and Mr. Herman, please.
Good evening, everyone. I was telling Tom, following adorable second graders. now you have us. So, here we are. So, when I found out about this from Tom, so this is Tom Herman. He is a great partner for us. He is the youth apprenticeship coordinator for our consortium. So he's been a tremendous resource for myself to kind of learn through, and just been a real valuable asset to help with all these businesses and putting together kind of some, way to kind of recognize them, because they do deserve recognition, because they're the cornerstone of a lot of our experience learning. So I'll let you kind of.
Sure. Thank you very much for having us tonight. Franklin is very, very much into work-based learning experiences, and youth apprenticeship is basically the one that requires the most commitment on the part of the employer as well as the student. They have to be invested, they have to be taking classes, they have to do a minimum of 450 hours. So it's quite a relationship that is built, and students, they are committed. I mean, they have to stay there and do a lot of work. Several of them exceed that number quite a bit, and because of that, they spend so much time with these employers. They really get to know the industry. They get to know, obviously, different roles within the job, or maybe the area which they're in, and they definitely get to know these employers. And above all, in addition to all those things, the technical skills, the working in an environment, an atmosphere that is around adults. All of those things are really good things. Probably the greatest thing though is the mentorship piece, and that's really why these people were chosen for these awards. They've gone above and beyond over several years. These are some of our longest standing employers. They know our kids. They're not just a student, just not a, hey, you're my employee, here's some duties, we'll pay you every other week. They really take care of them. They listen to them. They find out about the funny things that they're doing. And then, of course, they'll tell you, that they get something back too. Our kids bring a level of energy, a level of creativity to the workplace, and so it works out really well. But that mentorship piece that they bring to our students is absolutely valuable.
So I think we have representatives from 4 of the 5 businesses we're going to recognize here. We'll kind of read through a little bit, just information on each one, and then I think we're going to do some photos. So first up is Crohn's. So we have 3 representatives here from Crohn's. We have Jesse Bartle, Stephanie Johnson, and Megan Paquin here from Crohn's. So Jesse's kind of the manager that directly kind of supervises some of the students, and then Stephanie and Megan both work in the HR department. And Crohn's, located in the business park, has been a phenomenal partner for all sorts of things. I mean, youth apprenticeships, there's 3 youth apprentices there right now. They also have like an ICAD apprenticeship program for post-high school, and we're setting up a relationship where they're going to have some of those year 2 and year 3 people go into the classroom on a regular basis. Because our students really learn from people that are relatable to them, that they kind of can see themselves being in a few years. And I think that relationship that we're just starting to kind of rebuild will be phenomenal for them to have those organic relationships kind of formed. Because, when somebody was in the classroom, students need to see that they care. And when they go back on a regular basis and see the people over and over, then you have those conversations that start to happen. That I know that when I was introducing some of the people from the ICAP program to one of our instructors, Noah Bishop, one of the students had kind of, gotten to know some people, and all of a sudden the conversation broke out about financial literacy. Like, oh, you're 20 years old and you can afford a home and you can do this and that. So a lot of things come about this, as Tom alluded to, at the mentorship piece. So Crohn's has been an awesome partner, in addition to like just doing small projects and giving, some materials for students. They've been a donor for a lot of other things we've kind of had over the years. They've been a phenomenal partner and kind of a great team to work with, and always, looking to kind of, reinvest in other ways to kind of work with us. So definitely thankful to kind of Crohn's. And I think what we'll kind of do is we'll go through everybody, and then we'll have you all each come up and kind of do some photos is kind of what we'll do. Next, we have Alice Roller. So back here we have Russ Darwin and Dana Malmarowski. And we formerly, you may have seen Dave Dole here. He has since kind of moved on to retirement. So Russ is kind of new Dave.
Dave is the old Russ.
Right? And then, so with Alice Roller, again, we've had youth apprentices there in the past, as well as interns. And they are where we hold our Franklin Business Park Consortium meetings on a monthly basis. And they are a phenomenal partner. Dana has a couple of interns, and she does a great job of, right now the students are getting exposure to a lot of different areas. Because, that's great too. Exposure is one of the best things. And she's kind of taken it upon the consortium to have the students kind of work with lots of different businesses for their internship. So they're going to be all over the business park. And you spend 2 or 3 hours here, there, doing everything, which, is great for kids to kind of network and kind of broaden the horizons. In addition, Dana will actually be at our high school tomorrow. Our capstone course is kind of working on a project for the Business Park Consortium to kind of grow the amount of members. And the students are going to kind of go around and try and solicit more members, like through like some sales presentations and some work, and she's going to go and listen to some of what they already have done. So there's more than just youth apprentices. These people are coming into our classrooms over to like this on a regular basis, and it's great work, and it's just continuing to kind of get better year in, year out. And I think we get to a point where picking 5 will kind of be probably kind of challenging as we kind of grow and grow and grow. So definitely excited to kind of see what the students come up with tomorrow, and yeah. So I think then we got some more. Tom's going to kind of do some as well.
Andy and I don't normally dress alike. That way, so Andy had 2 manufacturers. I have 3 in healthcare, and consortium-wide as well as at Franklin, healthcare is a very big pathway for us. Quite a few of our students are interested in that. Maybe they have relatives in it. So to have local businesses that take our students on is phenomenal. And we need a lot of opportunities because there's so many kids. I'm going to start with John Curry. He's from Elizabeth Residence. John is one of the owners. Elizabeth Residence, Franklin specifically, and consortium-wide with Franklin specifically, is like a farm system for Elizabeth Residence. I mean, it's like AAA. We have a AAA CNA program, and then they go right to the majors with Elizabeth Residence. And they have had several students. I mean, they average about 5 a year. And these are also kids that come back during college for Christmas time or over the summer. So we really appreciate you guys doing that, John. Over here we have Aaron O'Hare, who also has a little mini-me there. Aaron is over at Innovative Pain. She offers our students that don't want quite as much hands-on an opportunity to be in healthcare. Innovative Pain Management, she does medical office. So some of our kids have gone through CNA, or maybe they just know it in advance. They're like, there's a lot of things I'd like to do, but I don't really want to touch people. So to be a part of that, and as you can imagine, healthcare is this big. So she really goes out of her way to really get to know the students. They absolutely love working with Erin, and she's very diligent about making sure that they do all of the single checklist items so that they can learn what it takes to be in that other side of healthcare. Our third group is Ascension. They were not able to make it tonight. Our contact actually had I think she had to rush to coach us 6th grade basketball or something like that. Anyways, very much like the other two, great opportunities for our CNAs to get an opportunity to be in a hospital setting and really cross paths with a lot of different people and get that experience. Right now, they have 4 of our students this year, so they're absolutely fantastic.
Let's give them a round of applause. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
We would love to present the certificates in front of our beautiful Franklin Public Schools wall over here. So Ms. Landcor could take those pictures. If there's any board members or anyone else that wants to join them, that would be a great opportunity.
I don't need to be with the chairs. Thank you. Mike, why don't you can represent us, Mike.
He's got the
okay?
pride sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
You want to have maybe Alex Roller go first?
Yes, I do.
In alphabetical order.
Oh, there we go.
Whoever walks first.
Let's see how long this takes to figure out. All right. Yeah, get in front of that. There, good. Well, good job, everybody. Thank you, Alice Roller. I'm trying to encourage genuine smiles.
Look at that smile when you got second graders.
Right? I know.
Crohn's, come on down.
All right, Crohn's.
Thank you, Alice Roller. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, do we have 2?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Crohn's.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Andy.
Andy.
You at the.
I'll see you. Mary, he's coming with me.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep, we'll be there. We'll be there.
All right. Good job, Crohn's. We appreciate you.
Jeff. Jeff. Jeff.
All right.
Is this chair out of there?
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. The little one probably does.
John
Yeah.
jump in. Here.
And when he starts, you will break that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, this for Ascension?
Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth. Oh, Elizabeth.
Thanks a lot, appreciate it. Yep.
Right there in the middle.
Yeah. Take care, buddy.
I was gonna,
everyone.
no, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I was gonna talking to him and see if he might want Obi. Because we're right there down the street.
Oh,
Come on.
I need to get Catherine. Ladies.
Oh, good
I know,
job.
but
Not
Should I
all
wanna say
healthcare
that?
involves touching people. That is so true. Good job, thank you.
Oh, shit.
Cool. Very pretty flowers. Cool stuff. All right. Do we have anything coming? I don't think so.
Thank you guys very much.
No,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Tom.
Thanks for
Appreciate
being
it.
here.
All right, it appears there's nobody signed up for community comment tonight.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. School board calendar, the regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, November 9th at 6 o'clock at the ECC, and also Wednesday, December 7th at 6 o'clock at the ECC. District Administrator update. Mrs. Bennon, please.
All right, thank you. Good evening. It's great to have so many visitors with us tonight. So I have two main items that I'm just going to update us on as a district. One is around safety and one is about our professional development day that we're looking forward to on Friday. So in regards to safety, I think it's pretty known in our community. It's been communicated out from our team that we've had in the last week 2 incidents that have taken place at our secondary buildings, last Thursday being at the high school and this past Monday at the middle school. We just thought it might be a nice opportunity to talk a little bit about high level, what were those incidents? And we've received some questions like, what's the difference between the two? Why was there a different response? So as always, we can't go into a great amount of detail. In particular, with Monday's incident, there's some things still being looked into and investigated, but at least hopefully offer some clarity around what those look like. So in the first incidents, we'll look at last Thursday at the high school. What I can say about both is that we've worked closely with the Franklin Police Department. In the Thursday incident, it started with phone calls of a threatening nature potentially towards the high school that went to 911 dispatch. So not directly to our school. So Principal Volo and his team that are here tonight could attest that they were greeted with police coming in to a potential threat. So that looks like tactical gear, that looks like weapons drawn, and what you would be coming into if you were taking on an incident that was active, like they were made aware of potentially through the phone call. In the time that they received the phone call and got to the high school within minutes, we were also able to identify that there were a variety, over a dozen schools in the state that had received the same phone call. Many of us have maybe heard of hoax or swatting. It's been going on in Minnesota. We've seen cases, other states we've seen cases. This was kind of the first time we were seeing a higher level number of cases in Wisconsin. There were a few schools that had seen that prior. For us on that day, because of that going on in other schools, my ability to call area superintendents, the ability of the police department to contact other PD, we could quickly identify it's the same exact comment coming through. Upon getting to the high school, it was evident there was no threat, there was no any type of chaos or anything like that, just in the immediate looking at the environment and surroundings. School was obviously put in a hold right away and then a lockdown while those things were quickly addressed. Because we were in that, administration partnered with the police, walk around the building, and just release those classrooms out of the lockdown after the principal was able to make a visual contact with the teacher and the students in the classroom to ensure that there was nothing going on. So pretty quickly able to move through. It was a hoax similar to area schools and move that way. When it came to Monday, it was a quite different incident. Monday, we were made aware of a phone call that was made directly to our middle school, talking about an administrator in that building, and again of threatening content similar to what the high school would have experienced in that type of level of what was spoken. Difference being it came to the school, a little more impactful and directful to the school. A couple of calls came through. We identified and called 911 immediately, put the building in a lockdown immediately so you can assess the situation. Police again there in a few minutes. They also started to receive calls, and it was a live voice in this case, meaning they were actually talking to somebody on the phone, versus in the high school case, it was a voiceover or like a automated piece that was coming. So that was also a distinct difference in the two situations. Through the lockdown at the middle school, it was identified, because calls continued to come while that was going on, that we needed to evacuate the building. We would need to do a thorough search to ensure safety of what was going on. So through that time, we evacuated students to our safe haven. That meant that an officer either from our department or the 3 departments that also came to join us through this situation, Greenfield, Greendale, and Oak Creek, partnered, went through the building classroom by classroom, again, that same tactical gear, so a rather visible experience for our students. The job of the officers at that point is to first assess the classroom and ensure it's a safe environment, and then quickly work to pat down students, move them out of the building. So that's what took place over about an hour and a half that day. By the time the building was evacuated, then we have the partnership with the police to say, we have an empty building that we now need to search. What are we going to do with our students? About 1,100 students that had made their way safely to our safe haven. So in that discussion, it was decided that because of the time needed in the building, that reunification was what we needed to do. We had queued up buses. We were able to safely transport students to our reunification point and begin the process. So quite a few differences in the two situations that hopefully were outlined a bit through that. The reunification process, a great shout out to the prior superintendent, Judy Miller, and people on the team that worked through a practice dry run of that last year that quickly enabled us to get our supplies on hand, be in the location, getting it set up so that we could greet students and immediately work into the reunification process. Through that, our families received 5 different communications, updating them along the way. They did receive a 6th communication later that evening that I worked with Principal Rosinski on, just in regards to everybody being safely reunified, what our next steps would be the next morning, and that they would hear from us again yesterday afternoon. From that point, just a little bit of what that looks like in the school. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack after that and a lot to work with our staff through. So Tuesday morning, we were greeted with food from our Education Foundation, which is always a warming piece, and then met with our staff to not only have that one-to-one check-in to make sure we're ready for our students, but then also to share talking points that every student's day started with a community circle in first hour, started with talking about what we saw, how we felt, how we can process that, talking about if we have bigger feelings that we need to work through, the resources we have within the building, and then obviously resources we have through our different connections in the community. So our student services team really stepped up to make sure that those talking points were ready, that we had them printed out in every teacher's hands so that they could be in the room, and then they were also available to just float around the building, to check in with educators, to help in those conversations, because we recognize everybody processes different in that moment and over time, so ensuring that we shared that out. So part of our last communication with families yesterday was, here are some of those resources for you to reach out to, here are the people at school you can reach out to, and a little bit more about kind of how the day went as that messaging came after the conclusion of yesterday. I would like to thank Greenfield, Greendale, Oak Creek Police Department for being here with us through that process Monday. Also to the Milwaukee Police Department, who brought in their detective dogs that could go through every bag, every locker, every aspect of the building to ensure there were no other people in the building and no weapons in the building. Nothing was found throughout that complete experience. I'd say the challenges we continue to have, there's small tweaks we can make from Monday as far as speeding up reunification. It's really going to take about the 4 hours it takes. It's 1,100 students and a lot of families moving through, and we're not going to skip security and safety just to move a line faster. So, but we've talked about little tweaks we can make. I think our other challenge continues to be, and always is, that there's ways to get news, and from our administration and people at this table is probably the best way. However, we turn to social media often, so we've been really trying to say we will meet with anyone and talk with anybody. Please come to us if you have questions or concerns, because there's a lot of rumors permeating through social media, and we can't keep up with the pace of those, but we can have transparent conversations so people can help to try to stop some of the rumors and things that kind of build through those conversations. So it's a little bit of the update on safety, the difference of the two incidents, and that we've had 2 days now in the middle school running classes and still have some investigation and work going on in regards to Monday's case. On a more exciting note to look forward to, we have our second Professional Development Day Friday. There's been a lot of work going into it by Dr. Moe and the teaching and learning team, which includes curriculum and student services, along with Nurse Molly, who's here. A lot of people have really been putting time into our Gear Up sessions. This allows, again, our educators choice in where they want to continue their professional growth, but all aligning with our coherence plan and school improvement plans. we had a lot of positive feedback from the first day, so we're excited to be able to build on the few things that we could grow, such as make sure we have coffee in the morning. So we will have coffee, we had snacks, and giving a little more time for movement in between. But it was nice that it was operational feedback, that the strategy and the deep work of what was going on was really hitting the needs of our staff. And the afternoon on Friday, will look a little different for every school. It's really school-based, but everybody will be getting some PD around universal design and practice in our classrooms, time to attend to their goals and their school improvement plans, and an overview of expectations and procedures with safety. So kind of the quick reflection things that we took away from our last 2 incidents that we can speak to staff about to, remember to have your go bags, remember what this looks like, what a lockdown is, what a hold is, just some of those reminders that are nice to have again after our August in service around it. So there's just some updates from the district aspect.
Thank you. On a personal note, I saw both of those, both last Thursday and Monday through, I tried to be a dad through them rather than be a school board member, and tried to stay out of the way, which I guess I'm fairly good at. But based on what I saw, thank you all. The kids were safe, and that's really important. So there's a lot of people in here in this room who are helpful in that, and thank you. It shows you're really invested, and the school district of Franklin really appreciates that that you do this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, programming update information. Mr. Blessington, please.
Up. All right, while we're getting set up, I just want to introduce just a couple of things. We're going to go through some course updates today, some programming updates. What you notice in your board package, just a little bit of moving forward, kind of the sequence of things with the board is you're going to see some information. So tonight's items that you're going to hear in the areas of computer science and tech ed and phi ed are all programming updates. My intention is to come back with you in a couple of weeks for final board approval on this, but we want to give an opportunity to go in depth. Try this one. Oh, thank you. So we wanted to give you a chance to look at the information ahead of time. In each of the packets today, you'll notice detailed information around draft of course syllabi. So we're really excited to have it come to life today. So before we get started, I just want to do, we're going to just do some introductions. I have a team, and we're going to kind of rotate people here, but I'm going to just keep going. We have 3 different slide decks to go through today. Just want to introduce Joey Jonas, Associate Principal at Franklin High School, and Dave Hust, teacher over at the high school, and Anita Sundstrom, our 4K-12 Curriculum Coordinator. So just getting into the work. Again, this is this particular information item is computer science programming. And again, this is the folks that I just introduced you to. And wanted to just go through in terms of the big picture of where does this fall in the continuous improvement or curriculum review process. This is in stage 4. I know Ms. Sundstrom last year came to you with this continues, but I think it's important. You're going to see this frame over and over. So when we talk about different stages, I think coming into Franklin Public Schools, we know each of our department areas or curriculum teams are in one of these 4 stages. So today you're going to hear everything's going to be in stage 4. So as we're going through that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sundstrom to talk about our rationale.
Yes, so in our computer science programming, we have, you saw all the details, but our hope is to strengthen this computer science learning pathway, and we have a very passionate teacher with us for that. And what you saw with that in some of our big pictures for this is that we would make some flexible entry points for students. This is an area that students have a lot of interest in, and so just to enter the programming of computer science, students could choose to enter with a semester-long class with this proposal or with a year-long class. And yes, they could start at freshman year if they were interested, or they could start later. So it's incredibly flexible to what the students are interested in, or some passion comes to them over time. The other thing with this is it would allow us to expand our AP course offerings. So there's kind of two things. We're looking at hoping that we could add an AP class with the AP Computer Science Principles, and this is like an introductory class that would be available for freshmen. And that would be like the year-long option if that's what a student wanted to start with. And also, in the past, we've had a Computer Programming 2 course, which the course and the teacher worked to help kids take the Computer Science A test if they wanted to. So it was kind of like already getting there, but if we could actually revise the Computer Programming 2 class to be AP Computer Science A class, that would more accurately reflect the work that the students are doing. Their transcript would show they were engaged, in a college level course, and they might feel more confident to take the test because the class name aligned with the test, rather than just hoping that the teacher's statement about it was there. So that's our rationale for the changes that you saw, and then that highlights that. We're hoping to revise the Intro to Computer Science class. That's the semester-long entry point. The Computer Programming 1 and the AP Computer Science A is the one that we're hoping to replace the Computer Programming 2 class with. And then to make the program a little bit more robust, to add the AP Computer Science Principles class as well. And then the next slide has what does this look like? And we think it's a really exciting box, but actually the reason, or at least we think it's like that. But the reason that it kind of has this look, and you might be more used to seeing maybe more of a hierarchy, is truly we want this to be flexible and a little bit based on the student's interest. So if you had looked through any of the syllabi, you could kind of see that there's different focuses in the class. So this is the kind of program where students could enter and kind of follow their own path. So they could enter through Intro to Computer Programming or AP Computer Science Principles. Either would be fine. If they weren't sure, and so they took that semester-long one and then thought, I still want to get some of that basic things, they could still go into the AP Computer Science Principles class as well. But they could also maybe want to dig a little bit deeper into the Computer Programming 1 course, or they could go down into the AP Computer Science A class. And the Computer Programming 1 course and the AP Computer Science course, Science A class, those are different types of things that students are learning. So they could do that in any order. They don't have to, have completed one before they do the other. So I think it could be really flexible to what they're currently passionate about. The Computer Programming 1 course might look a lot at apps. So maybe that's what they're interested in, not 10th or 11th grade, but maybe some other kids might not be interested in that till 12th grade. So if you were looking at that and wondering, why did the team design it like that? It truly just reflects the fact that this is very flexible, and the teacher could be meeting different needs depending.
So in terms of timeline for this, the changes would take effect next year if it would get board approval next when we meet in a couple weeks. So that's the goal, getting the course catalog in time for course sign up. So we wanted to open up to any questions that you have for us.
How much faculty do you have in computer science? It's you, Mr. Huss?
Right now, we have one.
Yeah. I was warned by my daughter not to be mean to you, so.
How many kids are involved with computer science?
Right now, I didn't bring the enrollment numbers.
Men,
I think 100.
100, and it's freshmen up through senior?
Yeah.
How do the kids know which one they want, where they want to start, and what how to differentiate between the, I guess, 3 classes that you could start out with?
Well, they're mostly you're going to
either start with Intro to Programming or AP Computer Science Principles.
Okay.
So if you're like really new and you don't want to take on the rigor of an AP course, then probably just Intro to Programming if you're just curious. It's nice too because it's just a semester-long course, so it doesn't take up a whole year. But if you want to challenge yourself and do the AP Principles, then you can start there also.
Okay.
I really like the flexibility for the kids. I think that's really important. All too often, we want to put them in a box right away and make sure that's where they stay. I like that.
Can we answer any other questions? Or? All right, Dave, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Huss.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. No. Yep. you're
I'll
still here.
scooch over.
So this is gonna be a group for our tech ed updates. We had, and we're fortunate to have Dave here for our last one. We had a couple of teachers, both Jake Haskell and Axe Bonder, were really instrumental in helping plan this, along with the rest of the tech ed team. But they were unable to. Jake and Alex were unable to attend. But really, just know that this is a team effort. What you're gonna see. So again, similar to what you saw last time. Again, an information update. Again, in stage 4. So I just want to point out, I think that frame is important as we go through not only these potential course changes, but moving forward. Just we always want to identify that stage and where this is coming from. And anything do the rationale for us.
Yes, so this one you definitely saw a longer summary to read through. But the big picture with the tech ed program updates is the things that we're proposing revising and eliminating would be because we're trying to reduce redundancies within the program, which basically is like course content that was found in multiple courses or across the high school programming in general. We really want to be responsive to student interest. So you'll see in a second when we look at the specific classes that the ones that we're proposing to eliminate have had incredibly low student interest for the last 4 to 5 years at least. And then the revisions and the work that we're planning to do does reflect modern best practices for tech ed. So if we look at all this detail, and you probably had to wade through a lot of attachments for this, so I appreciate your efforts with that. Our hope with the Applied Electricity course. So currently this course is listed as a year-long course, and working with the tech ed team, our proposal for a revision is to make this a semester-long course. So lots of times for students, again, if they want to explore something, it feels less intimidating to them if they can get into it through a semester-long class. It allows more flexibility in their schedule and that kind of opportunity there. The other thing is we do want to revise the content a little bit in the Applied Electricity. It currently overlaps quite a bit with the project Lead the Way Digital Electronics. So Joey and I are working with Jake Haskell around what could this look like you saw in the syllabus, where the content would be unique to the course, awesome for an introductory, are you interested in it? So that's our proposed revision for Applied Electricity. For engineering systems, or small, I guess I could do small engines. For small engines, we actually have a course called Small Engines and Power Systems, so we would like to revise that to just be called Small Engines to more accurately reflect the work that the students are doing in the course. And this would also allow us to reduce some of the redundancy that currently exists between the current Small Engines course and the current Energy and Green Technology course. So then we're hoping to revise the current Energy and Green Technology course into being the Engineering Systems course. Yes, so now your heads is spinning, but the Engineering Systems course, we're hoping, so that would be a change from the Energy and Green Technology course, and it would be, the content would kind of take some things that are kind of redundantly living in the small engines, we would keep it in the engineering systems, and then we would reduce redundancy with a lot of our environmental science classes that are happening. And we would also pull a few things from the engineering systems and robotics course that we're proposing to eliminate. So the 3 classes that we're proposing for revisions are all semester-long classes. They're all the kind of classes that kids can get into freshman year or any time that they get interested in that. And then the 3 courses that we're proposing to remove are all courses that have had incredibly low student enrollment interest. The engineering system and robotics has not run even one section for the past 4 years, and I think 5 years ago only one section of it ran. And that is solely based on student interest, or lack of interest. And then the course currently, we'd pull a few things into the new engineering systems revised course, but a significant portion of the engineering systems and robotics class, when we started really digging into what was going on with that, it overlapped a lot with the Project Lead the Way Principles of Engineering class and some of the transportation courses. So as a program overall, not really necessary for kids to still get a good experience with this topic. And then the Project Lead the Way Computer Science Principles course has not run for the last 5 years at least when we looked at the data. And when we talk to students, like they're much more interested in the computer science programming that you just heard about. So I think with like us continuing to grow the computer science programming, we'll see kids with that interest can go through those courses. And then we're proposing to remove the residential architecture course. Again, this course has not run at all for 4 years, and I believe 5 years ago it had one section. And it also is one of those classes that currently it overlaps significantly with our Intro to AutoCAD course and our Project Lead the Way Civil Engineering and Architecture course. So we would propose to you that making these revisions and these eliminations would continue to like create a really strong tech ed program. And the department feels like kids would still be able to like experience the topics and the concepts and the learning, maybe with like a cleaner flow of that. So we did also include, so in tech ed world, there's kind of like pathways within it. So you saw that the engineering and architecture pathway, kind of what it would look like, still quite a bit of access in different ways. Whenever we put like an arrow is kind of when we're saying this is a prerequisite for that. So again, you can kind of see that a lot of those courses are flexibly accessible. And then the transportation one is the other image as well. So yes, Joey and I have worked a lot with the team, and both Alex Bondar and Jake Haskell couldn't make it tonight, but we're happy to like take questions. I'm hoping we can answer it, but we'll bring it forward if we're not sure.
Yeah, again, we're hoping this would take effect for next school year.
Oh, yeah.
Do we think that this flexibility might help with the waiting list that we're seeing in tech ed for students? Like, will there be, if there's a one semester class, will we be able to run 2 sections of that for the whole year so that 50 kids can get in it rather than 25 or that sort of thing?
Yes, that can definitely happen with that.
Yeah, and especially with the electricity courses, it would free that up. The changes in the transportation side, that's going to be pretty similar. Alex already runs both of those classes as semester-long classes, but I think what you're alluding to is they do a great job and kids are super interested in their
Yes,
classes.
they are, yes.
And so this will help them do an even better job. Like that piece of modernization is huge too.
Sure.
You think of energy and green technology as a course and what's changed over the last 10 years when that course was written, like it's drastically different. So Alex being able to do this will be such a great opportunity to modernize as well and make it more relevant for kids.
How significant were your waiting lists for these courses?
So they were pretty full. It depends. In construction, it was probably the most drastic in terms of students wanting to take Construction 1 and Construction 2. Construction 2 had interest over 30 students, and they take about 13.
Oof.
Construction 1 was about 25 students over what we could support with facilities and staffing.
Okay.
In other classes, it would be more of a handful, like in woods or autos.
One more question, and feel free to say, let's talk about this another time. Do students assign any significance to the fact that classes are designated as Project Lead the Way classes? It's often included in course titles, and I just don't know what the significance of it is.
Yeah, same question. Is it prescribed curriculum to get that title or tag or?
Yeah, so I can't speak to how a student like feels about that title, but Project Lead the Way, obviously we do work with the organization and they do provide the framework for the instruction. So like, yeah, the curriculum from the course is through Project Lead the Way. Some of our students, and again, I'm not sure of the number, but some of our students with Project Lead the Way can work with, I believe, MSOE and maybe some other colleges.
For college credit.
Mike might know more details, but where they could be like their end of course test that they take for Project Lead the Way could then count for course credit if that's the route that they want to go. off the top of my head, I don't know how many of our students take advantage of that or
I didn't
want
even know that was a thing.
I do know that's a thing, and it's also taking those Project Lead the Way courses, just from a personal experience, can get you into like summer camp experiences and the college credit kind of, like, there are, like, if you can say that you've taken a Project Lead the Way class because it is, I don't know,
Nationally
like
known
nationally
and
certified,
everything.
and there is there's like a standardized test you take at the end of the
Yes.
course.
Oh.
It's kind of like I don't call it a certification, but there is some heft to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the teachers have to be trained specifically in it to
Yes.
be able to teach Project Lead the Way, so it's a certification that the teachers have through, is it UW Milwaukee or MSOE, I forget, but.
MSOE, I know.
Yeah,
gives-
so it's really specific to having that license to have that title.
And I would say every college knows of Project Lead the Way and the rigor involved.
Okay, thank you.
My question that I had is, with changing and revamping and getting rid of some courses, there's no chance, because they haven't run for 4 or 5 years, that there's some kid out there like, when I'm a junior, I'm gonna take this particular class, and now we're potentially gonna get rid of it, and their dreams are gonna be shattered, right?
We feel
I mean,
pretty confident with 5 years of data that that's not.
yeah. It seemed like it with 4 or 5 years of not running classes, but I just,
Yeah, and teachers were already polling, they're trying to identify who were the 3 students who signed up for residential architecture to get them in the course that would have the closest content to that, whether that's AutoCAD or one of the Project Lead the Way classes. So that was already a support for those students.
I would say our numbers were so, I mean, it would be different if we had, 16 or 17 kids signing up. I mean, sometimes that can be hard to justify a section to that, depending on the course, but we weren't even,
Nowhere near that.
we weren't even anywhere near that.
I just know when kids have that 4-year plan, if they know that as a senior, they're gonna take this particular class, I don't, cause any drama.
And I think anytime we go down a route like this, like spending time with the counselors and helping them understand, like, really truly these updates, like the experiences are there, like, can they help students see, like, oh, you're really interested in architecture, these are classes that help you explore that interest.
I would just add, just coming from outside perspective, being new, I mean, just the breadth of courses that we offer at the high school is pretty impressive. I think Project Lead the Way gets a lot of attention, rightfully so, but I think just the innovation that's come out of, through the district and supported by the board is really noteworthy. So I think the fact that, I would imagine that we could be coming forward to you in a couple of years or different, so there's always that mindset to innovate and like make sure we're cutting edge with all of these courses, and that'll continue to be. So I think it speaks to like just the support this community has had for these courses, and just the excellent teaching staff and administrators we have at the high school. So it's been really from my perspective coming in, it's pretty remarkable. All right, I'm gonna thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate
Shall
it.
we?
All right, we have one more. Okay. Hi, Mike.
Sounded surprised.
Oh,
We did have,
It's okay, it's really
we did
close.
have one other teacher from the fire department that could not be here today. He's actually doing some additional research on the course that we're proposing, Steve Drobot. But Steve was instrumental, along with the rest of the FIAD team, on what we're going to share with you today. But and again, information update, stage 4, and we're going to get a little bit for the rationale of our updates.
So as you can see on the slide deck, what we shared with you, FIAD and health education actually have standards around the items that are listed there. So we talk about life readiness as some of these indicators in terms of leadership, communication, social awareness, and responsible decision-making. Those are actually things related to that curriculum. So when you think about a health class or a physical education class, right, it is, deeper than oftentimes we might think. So we think about FIAD, the standards, which they're currently working through, looking at the new standards as a department across the district. It really does fit in terms of officiating course, and things you're learning there have a connection to the standards and the discipline. Additionally, there's a huge need. Whether you're a parent or a former parent of a student or a student athlete who's engaged in youth or high school sports, we've been affected by it, as is every community, in the area. And whether it's, Mr. Jonas earning volleyball officiating, which I think he passed. I'm not sure if he gave me the update.
Congratulations.
So congratulations, Joey. But there really are not enough officials for any pick a sport. There really aren't. So, there is a need in our communities for us to be able to have these things we have, and the WIA has been saying it for years in terms of, there's not a tipping point, but we're reaching places where it's hard to have contests if we do not have, the people develop and go into that. And it's really one of those things that, people have to have a love and a passion to do it. And if we can have high school kids who get trained, in areas, they're going to be, one, getting a great job immediately that they can, work as much as they want. And that's an absolute great thing. But two, like, if we have more of those kids, we're likely to have more people persist in adulthood and, get certified to be able to do it, and continue to do it and engage in it, which will help us as a community, but also, for high school sports, we can't have contests without officials, at least not real ones. And then connection to lifetime fitness and activity. So the idea of, we can all, laugh at or make jokes about, the officials that we've seen, not, Dr. Beer, but, in terms of these things.
That's a four-sport official.
Exactly.
I do not make fun of anyone.
So with Angie being the exception, like we can all say like, well, officials, I'm not sure if that guy at the volleyball match looked like he was really, tapped into his own wellness. But to be connected to sports and activity through our lives, like is something that really is part of a healthy lifestyle. So, we look at it as something that can keep you connected to, close to, and engaged in not just your community, but also your own well-being and fitness. And I think that's a really neat, byproduct of this is, like there is that aspect of we don't go pro in anything when it comes to sports, or at least most of us don't. So what do we continue to do as we, age and we want to thrive? So in health class, they talk about not just, what's your quality of life when you're 18 or 19, what do you want your quality of life to be when you're 49? When you're 39, when you're 59 or 69. And it's a really powerful thing they stress through all of those classes. But if you're involved in officiating, you definitely, have a little bit of, exposure to youth, which, keeps you young as well. And also I think just encourages you to stay active. And it's not just the soccer officials who have to be able to go up and down and do all those things, which they do. But all of them really do require some level of continued fitness.
All right, so pretty clear, right? Our new course, officiating sports. I will say that, this isn't something that, was just recently talked about. I think the team at the high school has been talking about this probably for at least 4 years.
At least.
The whole time we've known them.
Yes. It's my 6th year there, and I think I've heard about it for at least 5 of the 6 years. So.
Yeah, so there, I would say you have an extremely motivated group of educators over there that want to see this really be successful. In terms of where this fits in terms of like the courses, there's a little bit more of a hierarchy. Fits in under an elective area, but then you see kind of the offshoot of all the other courses. I think this is your slide, but I don't know if anything want to add to this.
No, as you can see, so this would not satisfy, if you recall, students have to take 1.5 credits, so 3 FIAD courses over the course of their high school career, and they have to be over 3 different years, at least. So you can't take 3 in 1 year, 2 in 1 year, right? It has to be spread out, and that's the state statute that tells us that. So this would be an elective, so much like lifeguarding, it's a thing that is a great need to fill, and it would not satisfy that grad requirement of 1.5 credits. However, I think we have some data that suggests that many of our students take more than the 1.5 credits, and that's part of the things the FIAD team is looking at. How do they get more students to take more than what's required? That's the neat part of our schedule is kids do get to choose to do more than just what they have to do to graduate, and many of our students do already.
Yeah, our students on average take far more than 3 classes.
So again, if approved at our next board meeting, we would have this in the course catalog, for this course to begin on the books next school year. So we're going to open up to any questions.
So which sports can they officiate then? Is it, they focus on a sport, but you teach all of them in one class?
So we're in the early stages of planning it. Right now, we're thinking it would be something that was a WIA sport, and then this may be somewhat flexible, kind of looking at like what are the students specifically interested in, and like how can we ensure they get enough time to practice and be really good at it. So we know for sure we would want to make sure each student has a chance to be, certified and do at least one sport, but it's possible that they could do more than one.
And the connection to WIA just, gives that, initial thing of we know there's going to be sort of proof of concept, not just high school, but lower levels as well throughout our community.
And we would expect that this would be like tied very closely to, when you look at the big map of, or the spreadsheet of course availability, like the teacher team, what we're talking about right now is like that they could like practice their officiating in team sports if that's running, or do some of these other things, individual sports or things like that. So how can they get those opportunities even during goal block? PE team often does like, let's do a basketball tournament. Well, if that's what a kid is working on their things, maybe they're practicing their officiating skills during goal block.
That was actually one of my questions is, would there be like outside of class time requirement to have that practice? If you're trying to do flag football, do you have to go to the Parks and Rec on a Saturday morning to practice your officiating?
So we had a big discussion about this, so I'm really happy that you brought it up. With our team, right now, we don't want to make that something that a student would have to do. So the team is really committed to the idea that if you sign up for this class, that your experiences could all occur at like FHS if that's how it would work with either your timeline or your transportation or whatever. But I would also say, like, if a student is able, interested, very passionate about it, like the team already has like a million ideas of their connections with the community. So students might be able to practice, in community events as well. And like, I laugh at our intro because yes, I have a 10 and 12-year-old and I believe I've officiated things with no experience. So please let these kids come to our games. But so like our goal, like we're writing this so that we didn't put any hours that they have to have outside of FHS grounds. They might have to do something during goal block or something like that.
So continuing during their school day removes those barriers to access. And we also know that many students will be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are, rec every year is, looking for kids to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, that's annually. So there will be no shortage of those things, but we still want to make that a requirement because we know that then limits who can actually take the class and be successful in it. If they have a car, if they, can get someplace on a Saturday, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a nice commitment by the team. It was like a month ago that we had a really long discussion about whether we wanted to put some time in this or not, and I appreciate that they are as committed to being as like open as possible.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. I would just say if there's questions that do come up, I will be coming for approval. So I appreciate any questions that could forward it. If there's information that you would be brought back as we take action on this, that would be helpful. So I could have those prepared prior to our next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, annual health report. Ms. Cody and Ms. Call, please.
Okay, good evening. I think, Dr. Moe, are you running our technology here? Okay, excellent. So it's just my privilege to introduce Molly Call. She is one half of the dynamic duo that we have, really leading and responsible for our health and nursing services here in Franklin Public Schools. So just looking forward to the opportunity this evening to share really the scope and sequence of all of the aspects of the health and nursing needs here in our district. Obviously, we've had a pretty big emphasis on really managing COVID-19 over the last couple of years. So this annual report is also just an opportunity to review and just understand all of the components, that are part of what we need to have in our school district in terms of, again, health and nursing services. So Molly's really prepared to present for you tonight and then, take a few questions as well. So we're really highlighting, just some of those key components of all of the different areas.
Awesome, thanks, Christine. She hit all my bullet points on my first slide. It did make me chuckle a little bit when Mike pointed out that we started 6 years ago, and most of you know Lori and I previously both worked at Children's Hospital for quite a while. And I still remember every year thinking, like, I keep waiting for that. I was so worried about leaving the hospital that I was going to be bored here. And year after year, I'm like, when is that going to happen? I don't think it's coming. So thank you guys so much for the opportunity to come and talk to you tonight. Please feel free. I kind of did try to chunk out the key items from what was shared with you guys that I felt like were important to highlight for you. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to stop me. Each slide kind of transitions to a new topic. The overview of our service is really not much new here. So Our health and nursing services team supports all students across the district, provided a variety of care to students in all of our buildings, from kids with chronic health needs that may need daily interventions to students who are injured, whether at school or not, and have injuries that will have implications on how we care for them at school. And really our biggest goal is to try to prevent time spent outside of the classroom due to health reasons if at all possible. And looking at our trends related to chronic health needs across the district through last year, there's a couple of points in this table that was shared with you that I'd like to kind of highlight. So again, in the 2021-22 school year, our two highest reported, and most of these numbers are coming from parent report on registration, fall in the category of asthma and life-threatening allergies. So while those are consistently two of our highest reported diagnoses, it's good for you guys to know that on behalf of health and nursing services, that's not where we spend the majority of our time. Those students, in most cases, don't require daily intervention and assessment. Most of our effort there is directed towards developing emergency action plans in partnership with their providers and their families, and making sure that if their symptoms do begin to disrupt their school day, that teachers and staff at school know how to respond to that. The two areas that I do think are the important ones to highlight in this, first would be type 1 diabetes. So if you notice in the chart, those numbers very slowly but consistently have crept up over the last 7 years of data that we've been watching this for. And that trend is consistent with what we hear from our partners at Children's Wisconsin, in addition to what is really seen across the nation in terms of the volume of children who are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I think this is really important for you guys to kind of, and for us to keep an eye on over the years, because we do spend a tremendous amount of effort assessing those students, making sure that the symptoms of their chronic health don't prevent them from being outside of the classroom. And depending on how well controlled they are or what stage they're at in their life, that can be pretty challenging. So each additional number in that category is a pretty hefty effort on behalf of health services every day. The other one that I find interesting and I keep an eye on is the numbers of students diagnosed with concussions. So if you notice in the 2020-21 school year, pretty expectantly, that number dipped off quite a bit. The spring and summer sports seasons did not really occur that year, so that's not very surprising. And then last year we had some abbreviated sports seasons, and that's where the majority of our students who are diagnosed with concussions are coming from. We do have concussions diagnosed outside of sports, but that's the big chunk of them. And we had students who were home more often than not last year, so that number was still a little bit lower. If you look back to previous years, those were higher numbers, and already this school year we have 21 students who have been diagnosed with concussions in the first 6 weeks of school. So I do anticipate that, given that our providers are continuously increasing their knowledge around when to diagnose concussions and how that impacts students in school, 5, 6, 7 years ago, if a student had concussion, they may be out of school for days. The current evidence really is to get those kids back to school as soon as possible with accommodations to help them get through a school day. So I think we are notified of many more diagnoses of concussions. And again, that is a pretty taxing diagnosis in terms of how we support them at school. It's a lot of communication with parents, students, teachers, assessment of the student to see how they're doing throughout the day. So just another good number for you guys to keep an eye on in terms of a reflection on where we're spending our time. All right, looking at kind of our formalized support for students with chronic health conditions. At the start of the 2019 school year, there were 179 students across the district who had formalized individualized health plans written for them. At the start of the last school year, for what we distribute to teachers and school staff at the beginning of the school year, there were 230 students who had individualized health plans. So that number has really quickly been ticking up over the years. Those health plans are intended to communicate either emergency action plans for students with health needs at school, or just this student has some significant concerns that school staff will need to know about in order to keep that kid safe throughout the day. They're pretty evenly distributed, and we do see approximately 50% of our health plans on average are for students with life-threatening allergies. So again, it's those, be aware of this allergy, make sure you're paying attention to our wellness policy and food that's brought into your classroom, and know how to respond if certain things are reported to you. The numbers in terms of and I include this for comparison purposes, so nursing services consultation for students who either have IEPs or 504s, that number has really been very stable over the last 6 to 7 years. Our health rooms. So each building's health room is very heavily utilized for responding to injuries that happen at school, triaging illnesses, and administering medications, both scheduled and as needed medications, prescription and over-the-counter medications. So Robinwood and Forest Park Middle School continue to be our highest numbers in both health room visits and medication doses administered across the district. When we look specifically at medications, this is not incredibly surprising, but very consistently through each building, stimulant medications or medications that are used to control symptoms of ADHD are the #1 medication that we're delivering consistently every day, closely followed by medications for pain, whether that be an acute injury or a student with migraines who has chronic needs that get managed at school. I really would love to skip over this slide, but like Christine mentioned, I would not be being honest if I didn't say that a tremendous amount of our effort in the 2021-22 school year was put into the management of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. You guys are very aware that it continued to take a toll on the academic setting from new variants being identified, ever-changing public health guidance that was coming to school districts. I think the highlight that I find in this data, my parting gift from Josh Borzik, would be that if you see our number of student positive cases went up threefold from the 2019-2020, or the 2020-20 school year to last year. Our number of average daily attendance cases, so that would be things that are reported from families to the district. So whether that be that the student would be positive, was sick and had symptoms that were consistent with suspected COVID, had somebody at home with COVID, that number of tickets for us to respond to went up 2 times in what our daily tasks would be. But our number of COVID-related absences is almost 1/3 of what it had been the prior school year. So yes, public health guidance shoring up some of the length of time that kids needed to be out due to isolation or quarantine did have a big part in that. But I do also think the district actions really significantly contributed to that, whether it be our efficiency with communication to families, our partnership with the Franklin Health Department to make sure that we had an infection control plan that was feasible in a school setting, our partnership with Summit Clinical Labs to do on-site testing, and our Test to Stay program. Variety of efforts that really went into that when you look at over the course of the last year, how much more we were still able to keep kids in school is pretty significant, I think. All right, and then the last topic, and probably the one that if Lori was here, she would agree with me, that is one of our biggest passion areas and one of the ones that we're the most proud of in our health and nursing services, is the work that we do for emergency preparedness in terms of medical emergencies and the development that we do with our emergency response teams in the district. So this graph is really just indicative of what we've seen over the last 5 to 6 years in district in terms of emergencies across the board and the wide variety of events that we may be called to respond to. Our nursing team is responsible for taking this data and applying it to how do we train our emergency response team members and what kind of policy or guidelines do we give them for the things that they're most likely to see. So injuries, again, as a nurse who came from a hospital background, is one of my least favorite things because you really never know what you're walking into. So what can we take from that to train our teams so that they really know what they can do best to keep kids safe and when they need to escalate care a bit. And then looking specifically at the last school year, our emergency response teams were utilized on 14 events across the district. I think in looking again, we still see that wide variety in different reasons that they were called to assist in the care of an individual. In 14 of those times, they recognized the need to escalate care to the Franklin Fire Department on 9 occasions. And then in 8 of those 9 911 calls, the individual who they called for was transported to a local emergency department. And what I see that as is that our teams are really building a skilled assessment set in order to understand when they need to escalate care, when they need to collaborate with somebody who can get that individual to a more skilled facility than what we're able to provide here at school. And those are just my key topics. So what do you guys have questions about tonight? whether it be this or anything else that was shared.
I'd like to start with just what you said as you're in Lori's passion project is training and getting safety assessment data. And I think that in your 6 years, you're really to be commended. I mean, this is, there's been a couple situations where lives were saved. But, just the general day-to-day of keeping our kids safer, I think that's, thank you. That's something that our schools are better off now than they were. And that's far better off, and people are trained, and that's important.
Thank you.
Yeah, you two could write the book. We're lucky to have you.
Absolutely. I think it's just really interesting, for us, we've heard it, a couple of years now, but for anybody who watches the video maybe of this meeting, you think, at least growing up, the school nurse for me was just kind of like, oh, my stomach hurts, can you call my mom and send me home? You guys are dealing with far more complex cases and managing them incredibly well. And for just two people and your staff, but, the two of you, I just think it's incredible what you do. And we're really grateful, and our kids are lucky to have you. And our staff is lucky to have you leading them.
Thank you. And with Lori not here, I can say very, very confidently, it's all of our health services teams, building leaders, everybody across the district here really prioritizes health. So it makes it so easy to work with everybody, knowing that, like when Annalie mentioned earlier in terms of like the evacuation, there was no question. Every single person involved knew what health needs needed to be prioritized to keep everybody safe. And it makes it much easier to work to improve all these things on an ongoing basis, for sure.
We were significantly up in terms of personnel in the health department, or what we're calling it, nursing department. Where are we at now?
So that's a great question. Our elementary buildings are essentially back to prior to COVID staffing. So there are 3 office assistants, 1 secretary, and 2 office assistants who share the coverage of the health room throughout the day. And I was glancing over at Laura because I think from my perspective, I believe that Lori had been meeting with their team, and their hours are back to what they had previously been. The high school, the same, their staffing is looking the same as it had been prior. So there's 1 LPN who primarily covers the health room on a full-time basis there, with 2 student services office staff members who are backup trained to assist in the health room as needed. Forest Park has been the kind of building for us to watch, and we work with HR and building leadership there to figure out if it's a need that moves up as the students are aging, or if it's kind of a unique mix of that's when students, a higher percentage of students are diagnosed with new chronic health diseases. A lot of the times by the time they're in high school, they're more independent in the management of those diseases, where they're starting to get there and needing more support. But it's a very busy health room. So last year, that building was covered by sub-nurses so that the CNA, who was previously the health room assistant there, could help us with all of the new data that we were juggling and the new parent communication. That was fabulous, but it does create a little bit of gaps in terms of we need people to consistently get to know those students. So that position was posted at the end of last year as a 1 full-time health room assistant position. And we were lucky enough to have a CNA and an RN who were both interested in job sharing that position, who had previously been sub-nurses covering that role. And that's really, really worked well. Again, with that, there are a higher acuity of students who are being seen in that health room this year. So we're pretty, and then we have our sub-nurse pool who's back to covering field trips, health room absences, things like that. So we're very close to prior to COVID staffing this year.
And is your office back in the middle school again,
Yes.
as it was before?
I am spoiled, and I have a space at the middle school and the high school, which is very fortunate. And Lori has kind of spaces around the district where she can locate as well. It's, some of the elementary space is a hot commodity, but usually they're more than happy to find a spot for us to be present for a little bit.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Employee handbook updates. Ms. Lancour, please.
Yeah, so the first thing I have for you this evening are some updates to our employee handbook. Some of the reasons, just kind of a quick overview of why we do updates to our handbook, are usually legal updates that we are advised to make, or we're making updates to our board policies and we want them to be consistent through our handbook as well. And then the other big resource is just kind of going throughout the year, talking with employees, kind of clearing up different pieces of confusion, some experiences that my HR staff has had, and how can we make or create a policy that helps make it more clear for our staff so they don't have any confusion. So those are kind of the big pieces for this evening. You have a copy of the handbook that kind of has the crossouts so that you know what it was and what we'd like to advise to move it to, as well as whether we're making kind of an update, an addition, or a change. So nothing too significant this year, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 updates or changes?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Have to act on it or no?
We do not. And staffing update, please.
Me again. So the update that you have in your board packet. So this previously kind of was a conversation that was closely associated with the budget, but when talking with Mr. Cromie, we kind of decided this is really something that's more of a discussion point that needs, it's part of the budget, but it's something more that we would like to have more discussion on and kind of more data. So we really looked at the turnover and retention, and kind of to give you a space, we looked at kind of what we experienced from the end of the last school year coming into this school year. So that's, and then anybody that may have left in the previous school year. So that's kind of the look back that we're going through. So the 21-22 school year moving into the 22-23 school year. So like, how has that changed and how has our staff turned over from that perspective? So you can kind of see the first document is in here is kind of our overall turnover rate year over year for the past couple of years here in Franklin. So we talk about our retirements, our resignations, and then the overall turnover. As you can see, we did have more retirements this year. We just had more employees that became eligible that earn their retirement and certainly deserve to have that experience. And then our turnover of our staff, or from a resignation perspective, kind of remained the same. So last year we kind of had the discussion of why did it kick up so high compared to the 19-20 school year, and we were hoping that we would see more of a decrease in those resignations, but unfortunately we didn't. It's equal to pretty much what it was last year. And I just want to make one note that this specifically covers the certified staff that the board kind of approves. So this is all of our educators as well as our district administrators who are contracted. So this specifically doesn't go into support staff. I have separate information and can talk a little bit about that too, just to kind of give you the context of what we're looking at. And then the second graph kind of goes into this exit for the reason for leaving the district. So we send a couple of different things when we get a notification from an educator that they're looking to leave us. We do have just an online form that through our Qualtrics system, that's a survey. It asks a couple of different questions, not too long because you really want to keep people interested to capture that information. But it kind of talks about, why are you choosing to leave? And we really look for that main reason. I'm sure there's several reasons why they're looking to leave, but ultimately we kind of want to capture the data as the one big one that they're coming up with. We ask them, what are some things that attracted you to the district? Why did you originally want to come and work in Franklin? We ask them, what are the main reasons, or what are some things that if they were different would cause them to stay in the district? So like if we had made those changes or kind of had more proactive conversations, what would they eventually have stayed if we had altered what they were really looking for? And then they do provide some overall, we have an open comment box. Tell me about your experience in Franklin. What are some things that you would have liked to change? Why are the reasons that you're really leaving? And then we do open up, they certainly can fill out the survey, but we welcome everyone to have a one-on-one in-person conversation. So I traveled around to several of our buildings and had some really enlightening conversations with a lot of our staff. And it also gives me the opportunity, not that by that point they're going to change their mind, and that's certainly not the goal of those specific exit interviews, but to really ask what prevented you from speaking up previously, or if you did speak up, I want to kind of go back to those resources and say, who did you tell about this? And then ask them, why, did they come to you with this? Why didn't we necessarily take it in any particular direction? What were those roadblocks that prevented you from making change? So as you can see, it just kind of has the breakdown. And Mrs. Witkowski emailed me a really good question. So just to kind of give you some clarification. So the closer to home, more than ever this year, we have seen a lot of educators. I think with COVID, the value of family was reignited in a lot of people, and that really valuable time that you can spend with your family. So I had a lot of conversations with those that chose to leave because they decided that if they can shave 20 minutes off of their commute every day to be closer to home and spend more time with their kids and their family, they were willing to do that. That was something that was really important to them. I got up, I love Franklin, but I'm not willing to do the 45-minute commute each way anymore. I've been able to find an opportunity in a district that's closer to home. So that's kind of what that means. The relocation is people that are moving far enough away from Franklin where it's not practical for them to work for us anymore. So we've had people, Indiana, and I think we had someone move overseas to Singapore recently. So really that it's just not practical anymore. And then the lateral is that's the group of our employees that ultimately have decided to move to an alternate district for the same level of position. So I'm a teacher in this district and I'm moving to a teacher in this district. So I just wanted to kind of provide the clarification or specifics on those. And then the last page is just kind of a summary and goes through kind of the current state that we are in education and hiring in general. As the report mentions, more than 17,000 residents of Wisconsin left the public workforce in 2021, which is a huge record for us. And I'm sure that education, along with other public sectors, really felt the pain of that. So we kind of talk through what are some of our retention support efforts in the district and what are we doing to try and hear the voices of our employees sooner so that they don't get to a point where they feel like they're not heard and they need to leave. So I'm happy to take any questions. I know that was a lot.
What percentage of people who are resigning,
Mhm.
not retiring,
Yeah.
choose to partake of an exit interview or did last year?
I was really happy with the results that we had. So we had 37 total resignations in the district last year, and I probably talked to or got a response from about 25. So it was much higher than I expected. So it's just at least people are willing to talk to us about it.
Did you identify any themes that you'd care to share with us or that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
In terms of the individuals that moved for lateral, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory things. It's better benefits, better pay, and then more opportunities for advancement. So maybe they eventually see themselves becoming a coach in another district, but we might have or are fortunate to have low turnover in that area. So they've maybe talked with another district that says, hey, if you come in and teach for us for a year, we can guarantee or promise you a coaching position within, 2 years or something like that.
I've got another one if you don't.
Please.
Yep.
Did you identify any, or did you get any data on sort of where people were at career-wise, like 5 years into their career, 10 years into career? Where is the bulk of our, especially the lateral moves, coming from?
Yeah, so I would say the highest years of career that we're seeing is in our 5 years or less group of employees. So we have a lot of educators that come to us new from their own education experience, or we have people that come to Franklin maybe for any given reason. And then our greatest turnover is we're kind of stuck in this. We can't quite keep people past 5 years. So that's something that we're really digging into heavily this year, including one thing that we did is really meeting with our new educators to the district to really make sure we're getting their feedback as often as we can. What is your first year experience like here in Franklin? Are things going well? Are things a disaster? How can we help support you? And then also kind of meeting with that group of educators before they leave us for after those 3, 4, 5 years, and asking them, hey, you know, you get a lot of attention when you start here. You go through that amazing new teacher week that's put on. So what are the gaps that we're missing? Now that you're acclimated, you're comfortable, what are some things that we need to improve upon in these years of your career here in Franklin?
Because one of the things, if you want to increase the retention of the employees, I know that we as a district, we start the new graduates at a higher level of compensation, you know, and I know that there is some resentment on the, you know, more experienced senior educators that, you know, why I'm with this one. So did you see that the people who are resigning are more of this experienced 20 plus years of experience, and they feel that they're not being appreciated because of the approach which we have, where we are giving, you know, higher compensation to the new grads as compared, and they feel that they're not being appreciated that much as such.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say, absolutely, I have heard that from some people that have chosen to leave. I don't know if it's specifically, so to answer your question, yes, I have heard that from some educators that have been here for longer periods of time, and they are struggling with where their compensation may fall in comparison to the compensation of everybody else. But it's a really tricky piece to navigate because you know, you have a finite amount of funding, and you obviously want to be respectful of everybody and where they feel that they should be in their earning potential. And it's one of those things where, if, as you know, the director of HR, when you get those phone calls, you have to be considerate of, you know, I completely respect where people are coming from, but at the same time, I can get 315 other people to make the same phone call. And ultimately, you have to, you know, be conscious of our fiscal responsibility and what that means. So it's certainly something that Mr. Cromie and I have talked about, and where does everybody fall in the grand scheme of things in terms of their experience, and how can we look at this moving forward? It's certainly not something that can be adjusted in a year. You know, it's a long-term planning that you have to dedicate to make those adjustments. So,
looking at your first graph, it looks like prior to COVID numbers, we've like basically doubled in our resignation and turnover. And then, you know, at the end, you kind of talk about how a lot of the data is, you know, around pay and compensation. So is there anything that, I know you're looking at data and things like that, but, you know, are we meeting individually, like with staff or teams of staff, to talk about what, you know, what would the staff suggest? Or like what, I guess I'm just looking for more of like, what are we doing? If we know the people are leaving because they're not happy with pay, what are we doing to, like, and you know, you just said it takes a long time, but we don't have 5 years to keep these people in the district. So what, like, tangible things, if I'm a staff member, what am I going to see that's making a difference?
That's a great question. I think that from a benefit perspective, I'll start with that just because it's a little bit less divisive. So from a benefit perspective, we're always looking at ways that we can improve our benefit package for our educators, kind of things to make it a little bit easier and more transparent. You know, wellness is something that we're really conscious of, especially mental health. It's a tough thing though. Wellness is one of those things where it looks a little bit different to everybody. Like some people find this to be what it means to be wellness, and some people find something complete opposite. It's not, you know, it's what they kind of go as. So from a benefits perspective, we're always looking at what is the best plan that we can offer our educators. What can I say specifically around compensation? And I don't know, Mr. Cromie, if you have anything to add to this particular piece, but I think it's just, you know, I know the district, and I haven't dug into it too far, more recently did a compensation study, so kind of looking at what that looks like, or what the results were from that, and how, you know, we were in comparison to other districts, and the kind of those constant analysis. That's something I'd probably have to put more thought to if I was going to present in front of employees and really want to be transparent with them, which is always my ultimate goal.
The one thing I would add, that first graph, as you mentioned it, it's going to look pretty much the same in every school district in Milwaukee County, right? There's a large spike. One of the things that we have seen in the employment world, especially with education through COVID, and then really kind of dating back to that March 13th of 2020 when schools closed down, is people saw a whole different world that was out there than what they had experienced just through the virtual world and being able to do all these things virtually, which has led to people leaving education for other choices. So like one of the things I used to talk about with the students at MSOE is I really only cared about what are the salaries of other school districts. That's out the window because our baseball field now is Northwestern Mutual, and what are we doing with people in business? Or what are we doing with some people in manufacturing for our tech ed positions? Or what are we doing in the science industry with our, like, it has just changed dramatically. And so sometimes when people are leaving for salary, we can't compete with that because they're going to a private industry who has a different funding mechanism than we have. And unfortunately, we just can't play ball in that, even though our teacher is playing ball in that. From an area standpoint, in working in multiple districts, we are very competitive. If we get outbid, someone's buying that staff member because they need that staff member to fill a position. We have done the same. So, like one of the things I was talking with a whole bunch of leaders at SAAs, there's this big push to provide funding for social workers. And the state of Wisconsin wants to pile a whole bunch of money into school districts so we can really bolster our social worker staff. Unfortunately, there aren't any more social workers. And so what we're going to do with that money is either try to retain our own at a higher rate, or we're going to buy somebody else's because somebody stole ours, right? We're not adding anything to the pool. And so we're kind of in the same situation at times. We're buying other people's staff because they bought ours, and we haven't done anything other than fill the exact same position. We just paid more for a body. And so we're constantly I don't want to say constantly in negotiations with that, but oftentimes we're debating, is this position, can we find another person to fill this position? Because the law of supply and demand will tell us, yes, if we offer this, 40, 50 people will apply. Or are we looking at positions where, like if we get 2 applicants, we're cheering in the office and hoping one of them's an A player. So that takes into account too, where we can go with that. And in some positions, we're better positioned than other school districts, and in other school districts, they're better positioned than us to either provide for that or. So the ball game is just so much different. Like trying to get a handle of it and be reasonable with other school districts and try, like before, like another piece is a large one is, well, you pay liquidated damages. That 5 years ago, that would have been like, no, we're not paying your liquidated damages. Now it's yes, and how much do you need to move? And like all of those things come with it because people are willing to do that now because it's just changed.
So, because as Mr. Kurumi said, we know it's national issue now that there is lack of educators. People are not going to education field. So the pool of educators have decreased. The students are the same, rather increasing slowly and slowly. So it's going to be a more competitive world. But have you, Ms. Lanco, seen that at least what we see our district and our neighboring district is that are the people who are resigning, are these people who have more than 10, 15 plus experience who feel that they are getting better pay at a neighboring district? Or is it the people who are resigning, as you said, are the fresh graduates, even though they're getting a higher pay, they're still leaving for more higher pay? What's the trend?
Yeah, I would say the newer graduates and those experiences. And I will say that, we do hire a lot of graduates right out of school that are coming here. And I think there's a lot of different elements to take into consideration why they're leaving. Obviously, they may have an opportunity to move to an alternate district for more pay. But I think also at that stage in their life, they found Franklin and they really wanted to work here because they went to school in Franklin, or maybe they moved back to close to their hometown and their parents at that point. And then life kind of evolves very quickly at that age, and they realize, you know what, I'd rather be towards Madison, and I'm going to move. I want to be, you know, towards that type of environment. So I think there are a lot of different elements that drive them, but I think that they are also, you know, newer graduates that are interested in, like, really engaged in the learning and the environment, and they bring kind of that fresh out of school experience, and so they are very marketable, and a lot of school district will want to, you know, work with them. We obviously did have educators that had more experience that did choose to leave our district, and I did have exit interviews with them to kind of better understand, you know, what were their motivators, and those were, you know, a lot of people, I want to be closer to home. The commute's just too much for me. I don't enjoy that part of my day anymore. And then ultimately, you know, they are very sought after as well. It's great to have an educator with a lot of experience that can bring all these new things to your students and build amazing programs like we've seen and we're lucky to have in Franklin. So they are very sought after. They are recruited these days. It's not necessarily, you know, we're fortunate to post on our site and we have 45 applicants for one position. It's common where we have 5 to 6 these days, and we're really, you know, reaching out to everyone in all of our resources and all of our, you know, administrators that come from other districts. Do you know anybody from your previous district that you would really love to have on your team? So there's a lot more active recruiting that's happening in education than we probably have seen in the past.
I appreciate that we're looking for fresh ideas to try and not only find people in a tough environment, but also keep people. You know, I like the idea of the stay interviews and other things we're doing with PD days, that we're having the educators have a little more choice in what they're learning, and giving them a little bit more voice. I think is helpful. So I'm just glad we have fresh ideas and that we're working on ways to retain employees and in some ways find them, but there's not a lot to find at this point.
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
Yes.
In the vein of fresh ideas, I was just thinking about how when the gentleman from Elizabeth Residence was here and the comment was made that we're sort of the AAA training ground for their CNA program. Is there any, this is totally like, have you ever thought about, but is there any way we could do that? Like, is there any sort of a future educator track that we could develop within the school that, I don't know. Is that a thing?
I mean, I think that's a great point to bring up. I mean, one of the conversations I've had more recently with Mr. Volo and some of the high school administrators is that, you know, how do we really build in experiences for students that haven't necessarily met their student teaching piece of it? But for example, if I'm a student going through a program, I'm looking to work part-time, can we possibly bring them into our schools as a special education assistant or a general aid assistant to really get the experience in a school, get that really practical experience? There are some barriers, some age barriers, so DPI does require you to be 18 in order to kind of work as a special education licensed aide in our school. So that's kind of, depending on birthdays, that can be a little tough, but I think that that would be something that the high school would really entertain and love to focus on.
What about even like, you know, there's shadowing days, for example, at organization which I work, you know, sometimes they have this day where you can bring your kids to shadow you and all that stuff. So is it possible that maybe if some of the students who kind of just have that, hey, you can shadow this teacher just to see how to be a teacher feels like, you know? And of course, the kids are excited, but maybe creating some excitement in the kids that, hey, you know, I can shadow this teacher for the day and see how it's, so something like that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something to explore. You know, I think it's finding partnerships within what grade level are they really in, or like what level in education are they really interested in, and then finding teachers who are, you know, obviously I'm sure they would welcome students into their classrooms and kind of give them that opportunity.
That's something we could talk to Andy Thompson more about too, because a job shadow opportunity is really something that he works through in his program. So it'd be easy enough to build in And I've had some of those, early conversations with him, learning more about what we have. So I think those are really good ideas.
Yeah, and I know like my daughter is having one of those experiences this year with the middle school teacher, where she's going in every other day.
The other thing I'll say is we have a meeting every other week. I would say we're probably still 2 years out from, we're in the process of developing an educator pathway. So if you're not familiar with that program, you would find, I would think we need at least 3 staff internally who have a master's degree who would essentially be able to teach like a educational concepts course on site at the high school. So kind of like, and then those students would do their practicum experiences in our elementary schools. So it would be almost like a CNA, but on site here. And they get college credit for that. So they don't come out with a teaching degree, but several schools have a similar model, and it's very similar to what you would think about with the CNA or a marketing, but we have plenty of teachers here, so we don't have to send them out to a business to get that course and learn. So I think that, again, was something that was talked about for quite a while, got delayed during COVID, if I'm really being honest, and it has now kind of made it to the surface again. And we committed, we have calendar meetings every other week for the rest of the year to make sure that we turn that information out and try to move that faster. But I would not say by next year, it'll likely be 2 years. There's a lot of like certification and who are you going to partner with, and there's a lot of necessary pieces that need to happen before we could start running it.
Neat.
And maybe, because if it's in the planning process, maybe starting advertising now, kind of in the somehow that, hey, we are looking forward for this, so that maybe the student who's a freshman now or going to be a sophomore, by the time they become a junior or senior, they already have on the radar that high school is going to be providing this opportunity, and they can start building that into their curriculum as such. So maybe some kind of small advertisement in kind of in a high school, social media, whatever it is, just to kind of,
Makes a lot of sense.
All right, thank you. Any other further questions? All right, item E, 22-23 budget adoption approval and tax levy certification. This is an action item. Mr. Cromie, please.
Yep, so a couple of hard numbers have come in since we met in August. So first is our third Friday count. So we were up 2 residents. We're up 11 students overall, so butts and seats. 2 residents, but that includes both the students in our chairs and then students attending elsewhere. Count towards your residents as long as they live within our school district boundaries, right? So we're up 2 of those, 11 seats, 11 more seats are filled. We have our October 1st equalized property valuation. That's just a portion of your mill rate, so that's just a number that gets populated in there. And really the biggest portion from our standpoint is state aid gets certified on October 15th, although that was a Saturday this year, so those numbers were provided on the 14th. And that was up $1.7 million over what was projected at the beginning of the year. So that's all good and grand. From my standpoint, things that I have done since October, I mentioned this at the Key Communicators, was really diving into what I consider to be our regular personnel. So those are individuals who have a regular set schedule that they're showing up at FPS, whether they're teachers or custodians or educational assistants, secretaries, or they have some sort of job that's regular and quantifiable. So I've gone through every one of those individual salary, hours, or hourly rate, benefits associated with everybody there. Running entirely through the recreation department, and you'll notice the recreation portion of the levy is down about $35,000, $40,000 or so is what was presented in both June and then brought back for approval in August. I've run completely through food service as well, entirely including staffing, and then working with Jessie Christensen to make sure I understand all the things that she feels she'll need to run this particular year. Departments and building budgets, those I just kept status quo, but I did reevaluate utility costs as well, so that's continually fluctuating up and down. All in all, our really kind of the balancing measure that we talked about in August was about $1.5 million of ESSER funds to help kind of balance us out for the beginning of the year. or for the course of this particular year. So really, we've been able to take that down to about $1,050,000, and you're going to see that really in two chunks. The first I have talked with Mr. Sprague about, but ESSER funds, while they have like this 4-year spending period, auditors really would like you to claim them in the year that they're actually expended. So we had anticipated making that claim entirely in the 22-23 year for $805,000 of what was actually expended last year. And then I would have just recorded that as revenue this year and kind of not had this like slightly just accounting issue. But essentially we had to claim that as of June 30th. So you'll see fund balance went up last year about $805,000. This year it's projected to go about $805,000, but stay flat if we look at it over the course of 2 years. So that $805,000 is directly the result of the ESSER payment from last year. We've added $238,000 this year for a total of $1,043,000 of ESSER funds to keep us afloat. Good news is it's not 1.5 million. Bad news is it's still $1 million that we don't have accounted for next year if no state aid comes in, or no changes in state aid, I should say. And I don't mean just like more state aid, but changes in the revenue limit or changes to categorical aid. So we have some positive, but there, again, we're still looking at $1 million hole. So those are really the big changes. Ultimately, the total tax levy, $34,648,559, up approximately $1 million over last year. But with the increased equalized property value, our mill rate on the assessed value of your home is down 59 cents per thousand. That does include the board's approval from September of the $3.81 million of additional defeasance into Fund 39, which we will use with last year's about $1.25 million or so for a total defeasance then, which we will officially do at the beginning of the year of about $5 million or so when we put all the numbers together. So we have 3 borrowings. 2 of them are related to the middle school. So there's an $8 million borrowing out there. We'll chop about $5 million off of that particular piece when we officially do the defeasance, which is done prior to the April 1st payments for debt. What questions can I help answer?
Anybody have questions?
I have an amendment I'd like to make if we're at that point.
Well, I'd first be looking for a motion to approve the adoption of the 22-23 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Can't I amend that?
You can't amend something that hasn't been moved.
So now we've
Now you
made
can.
the
Now
motion.
Now we've
Now
made the
you
motion.
I made it, Alan seconded.
So you'd have to make a motion on your amendment, and then we'd vote on that,
Yeah,
and then
you
we
can
would
make a
vote
motion.
Right,
Only vote on it if there's a second to it.
right. I'd like to make a motion to modify the tax levy for debt service by 1.1 million, thereby using additional fund balance in debt service, which currently is at 3 million, and reduce the levy overall to the same amount as last year. That is my motion. Can somebody?
Would you mind repeating that, please?
Yes,
So
I
it's a
make a motion to reduce tax levy in debt service by 1.1 million and increase the use of fund balance in debt service by 1.1 million, which currently has a fund balance of 3 million.
All right, I'm looking for a second to that motion or to that amendment.
I'll second that.
All right.
Discussion.
Yes, could we have a discussion for that amendment, please?
Can you state it one more time?
Reduce tax levy in debt service, 1.1 million, and increase the use of fund balance by 1.1 million.
Which fund?
Debt service, which currently has a fund balance of $3 million, is on page 26 of your document.
I just didn't know which fund you were speaking of.
This fund balance can only be used for debt service. It is available. It would still allow $2 million to remain in debt service. It also would allow the defeasance that we all want to make. And more importantly, it would put our tax levy at a 0% increase from last year.
Can you speak to, Mr. Cromie, to your rationale for your fund balance as?
I have a point of order here. Mr. Crony doesn't vote. This is a board discussion.
Okay.
Can you just give the page number again?
Page 26.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone on the board who can speak to what a reasonable amount of fund balance for the debt service fund is, practically speaking?
I can say that there's no cash flow issues. Cash flow issues are a problem with general fund. We're not touching general fund. And really, we don't need any fund balance in debt service.
If you can just give me a moment, I will provide some background for you.
The background is
I'm
available on page
calculating on the
26.
spreadsheet here.
I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for the reasoning behind the budget that we were presented.
Well, I think that Mr. Comey is is an expert at what we're exactly talking about. I would appreciate hearing his thoughts.
So I'm just running some numbers here. So for debt service, so everybody is aware, your debt levy, so our debt levy today covers our 2023 calendar year payments. So our debt levy typically runs underneath what's actually happening in our fiscal year. So this is a little odd to understand on how the debt levy works. But our budget runs July 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2023.
I think the question was related to the
I will get
amount
there,
of fund
Linda.
balance.
I will get there. Thank you. So our our budget runs July 1st through June 30th of a calendar year. So we pay debt in the fall of 22. We pay debt in the spring of 23. The amount of interest, because it really only relates to interest, in the fall is always larger than the amount of interest that you pay in the spring because it's 6 months removed, right? It's 6 months less closer to being paid off. But it's like kind of hard to explain, but we're getting closer to the timeline every time we make a payment to when that debt is entirely paid off. Unlike our mortgage, which is set at a specific rate every month, the amount of interest in our debt service drops every 6 months. And then we carry that debt for 2 terms, and then we drop it again, and we carry it for 2 terms, and we drop it again. So technically, when we levy, we're actually levying less than we have to pay in that particular fiscal year. So the numbers I ran just show me that if we were to empty fund balance today, over the course of our debt, we're still gonna have to make up $1 million somewhere. So like quick math tells me if we were to lower our fund balance debt below $1 million, we're gonna be making a transfer out of general operating at some point to cover that debt.
I believe your statement was if fund balance were below $1 million.
Yep,
This proposal, my amendment, would leave fund balance at $2 million. So twice as high as the number that you saw as minimum.
Yep,
There will be
and
$2
running
million
some quick
left.
math, that's where I'm at.
But
Did you run any of that math?
the math that I'm not sure where he's coming from, but I do know that our cash is managed across all funds, and we have 26 million
Okay, so
sitting in
you-
general fund. So I'm
That
not
is
sure.
not a true statement. Our cash is not managed across all funds. Our cash is managed by the fund that it is managed in.
We have one checking account.
Statutorily, we can't just move things between funds. Even I know that.
That's not, we're not discussing that.
Okay.
There'll be $2 million left. His discussion resulted in his statement that we need $1 million. This will result in $2 million left. We have enough, even with the use of $1 million.
So, Linda, just to kind of understand is that we are planning to pay a 5 million.
My
And
plan
actu-
is to use what was over levied last year and not defeased, plus the 3.81 million is approved by the board in September
And the,
to defease $5 million in January.
the amendment does not impact any of that. He would still be able to make all the same payments he wants to make. It does not impact the expenditures. It only impacts how we fund those expenditures.
For this
that correct?
year, but my understanding is that it could, if we are constantly, if we are slowly decreasing the amount left in the debt servicing fund balance over time by making these types of decisions from year to year, as opposed to taking a long-term view of the issue, we could hit that point. And I'm not comfortable with a back-of-the-envelope calculation that just happened now. I wish you would have had more data to support your amendment.
Linda, could we stop using the word he and they, and we are not, we are
a team.
We are a team.
I'm not using he and they.
You
I don't
just did, and you keep doing it.
I would like to talk about the amendment,
Wait,
not
so
my use of
can
he and
I,
she.
can I ask a question, Linda? You talk about if we approve your amendment, you mentioned it changes, I'm looking at my notes, I'm just going back, if you could almost like repeat your amendment, it would change the tax rate for Franklin, is that what you're saying?
It would reduce the tax levy that taxpayers would pay, yes. By
From what to
1.1
what?
million. I'm sorry, what?
From what to what?
It would reduce it by 1.1 million. The page he sent here, instead of 34.6, it would be 33.5. It'd be reducing the amount we would be asking our taxpayers to pay in this next year on their tax bill. It would be the same amount they would have gotten last year. This gives us a flat tax levy, which is consistent with what we have done as a board over the last 10 years. We have never had a 3.3% increase in levy. We have had 1.510, even during the time periods that we have built that middle school. We have been able to control levy to that extent. And this amendment will allow us to continue that and still accomplish all your debt that you want to prepay. It's a win-win.
So what
We
you're-
will all win together.
So
We.
Linda, the amendment and Mr. Cromie's recommendation is that, so we want to pay off some debt. It's always healthy to pay off some debt because, you know, especially when you're in a situation, it's always better to pay off some debt, you know. We all agree on that.
We're not changing that. We're not changing that.
So let's so we all agree that it's always better to pay off some debt. Now,
We can talk about that, but that's not, I'm not going to debate that at this point.
now, how to pay is the question.
How we fund that, yes.
How we fund that payment. So, if we go with Mr. Cromie's recommendation, you know, who has the knowledge and the expert, we will be we'll be taking around 1.5 million. No, Mr. Cromie, how much are you taking from the general debt fund?
So we currently would be taking 1.25 million, because that's the part that was over levied last year. And the proposal is to add another $1.1 million to that, so we'd be taking about $2.35 million of that Fund 39, debt service fund.
Which is at 4.3 million at the beginning of this year.
So
This is on page 26.
Right, so
Page
taking that
26.
2.35 million would put us right at that $1 million mark, which puts us very close to being underfunded for the entirety of the debt
It would be
service we
$2
have.
million. Is that your number here? I'm reading page 26, fund balance, end of year.
Oh, from
3,027,000, is that a correct number?
let me find the page here, so I have exactly.
Yeah,
what
so
we're looking at.
right now it's 4.29 million, it's 4.3 million. And if we take 1.3 million from that, it remains at 3.3 million as such.
So, Ms. Witkowski would pull 1.1 from the 2.281716 number that's there.
I'm sorry, where are you getting 2.2?
So fund balance at the end of the year is $2,281,176.
I have 3,027. Page 26.
Long-term, page 26. Fund balance at the end of the year, page 26.
Oh, sorry, in the wrong one there. My fault. Yep, from the 3,027,000, so you'd be at $1.9 million left.
1.9, I'm rounding it 2 million.
Okay, now what does that do to our, Mr. Cromie, you're saying that's underfunded somehow? for
No,
next
it
year.
appears that that would probably be sufficient. I guess probably the larger question is the potential state budget looming on the horizon and what that's going to do to
I'm
the overall
sorry, but
tax levy.
that's not, you're contributing to our debate, I'm sorry.
Oh
We're
my
talking
gosh.
about this.
I just asked him a question.
This is our debate. He has told me more
He
than once.
is our content expert.
We have expertise around this table here too. You guys have the information right in front of you.
All right, great, thank you.
I move the previous
yes,
question. You have to vote to see.
Yes, I'd call for a vote is what she's doing on the amendment.
Before, Debbie, you have been here on the board for 20 years. Oh, gosh. Right? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you kind of, we want a financially healthy district because we don't know what might, especially future projects might come. And if we want to borrow any money, we want to be a very strong credit rating district, which I am familiar with. At the same time, we want to ensure that in these troublesome times, we don't, burden our residents if we don't have to,
Right.
Since you have been on board for so many years, what is your experience? Because 20 years, more than 20 years of experience, I'm so sorry to put you on the spot, but that's kind of.
As long as I've been on the board, we've always been fiscally responsible. We've always been financially stable. I attribute that to Mr. Milzer and his expertise. But I do feel like this is a hard time right now for people. This is a very hard time for people, and if we can be cognizant of that and keep the increase or the levy flat, and we have the ability to do that, we should do that to our citizens. I hear from young families, young people who are our clients, they want to move to Franklin, they want their children educated in Franklin, but they can't. They take a look at the taxes on homes, and they can't move to Franklin because of the taxes. Because then they look at their whole monthly mortgage, and they're saying, we can't afford all of that. We can't do that, but I want my child to go to Franklin Public Schools. So if we have that ability right now, and we can do that, and we can maintain everything as is, then I don't know why we would increase things for our citizens.
We seem to be pretty scared about how much we're going to be raising our property taxes. So I went back and looked at past property tax bills. My tax bill from last year was about the same dollar amount as what I paid in 2012. So how crazy have we really been with taxes?
We haven't.
No.
We haven't. To Linda's point, we haven't.
Yes.
Right? We have not.
Correct, and we should continue that. This is a 3.3%. We've never seen that before.
And we're saying that people have the kind of problems that they have, and these are being caused by inflation. We have inflation here too.
Yeah, Dr. Beer called for a vote, but did you have something? that-
Yeah, so if we were to use the 1.1 million as Ms. Witkowski discussed, we're talking about $135 in property taxes on a $500,000 home.
Increase? Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
If we followed what Mrs. Witkowski is
We would
proposing,
take
we would
the
take that
property,
away.
or property taxes down to about $135,000 on or $135 on a $500,000 home.
Dr. Beer called for a vote on the amendment. So I think we need to, take that vote and,
Don't we have to like vote on a call?
You have to vote on the call for the, yeah, you need a second to mine.
To your call.
your call.
Okay, so second the call to vote.
I believe you did, didn't you, Mrs. Sapersky? No?
I didn't before, but I am now.
You're cutting off discussion, is what you're doing.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You need a majority.
Yeah, I think it's a.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Sapersky?
Yes.
Voted yes to what?
You're calling the previous question, so we're ending, she's voting yes.
Saying yes, we're
Let's call a
calling
vote.
the question
We're
so
ending
we
debate
can
on the
vote on the
amendment.
motion,
Okay. All right.
right? That's how I
Yes.
understood it.
So we're voting on the call.
Correct.
Oh,
Okay. All right. Mrs. Sapersky, you voted aye.
Yes.
Dr. Khan?
Aye.
Dr. Beer?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Sprague?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
No.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
aye.
All right. The call for the vote passes 6-1.
So now we vote on the amendment.
We vote on the amendment, please.
All right. Dr. Khan?
This is voting on the
We're
amendment.
voting on
Do we want to restate the amendment?
that Mrs. Witkowski is making.
Can we restate
Would you
the amendment
restate it?
before we vote on it,
Yes,
please?
this would reduce tax levy to our citizens, $1.1 million, and increase the use of debt service fund balance, $1.1 million. But the remaining fund balance of $2 million, rounding up, and allowing full defeasance as proposed previously.
I vote no.
Mrs. Sapersky?
No.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
No.
Dr. Beer?
No.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Sprague?
No.
I also vote no. The amendment fails 6-1. Now we need to go back to our original.
All right, there's been a motion, the motion is on the table to approve the adoption of the 22-23 budget as presented.
The motion was made by Mrs. Sapersky, seconded by Mr. Alexandrovich. Do we need a roll call for that too, I believe?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I vote aye. Mrs. Witkowski?
No.
Mr. Sprague?
Aye.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Sapersky?
Aye.
Dr. Khan?
Aye.
Dr. Beer?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1.
I'm looking for a motion to certify the 22-23 fiscal year tax levy to the city of Franklin in the amount of $34,648,559.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I think we need a roll call for this as well.
Yes. Dr. Beer?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Sprague?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
No.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Sapersky?
Aye.
Dr. Khan?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you. Treasurer's report is available in Board Docs Library. School Board Liaison reports, Personnel and Policy 5312, Pupil Immunizations, Dr. Khan and Ms. Call, please.
So this policy was last revised in 2016. There had the only change of some language where the policy itself is the same. Just some language, instead of the pupil, we are going to refer them as student. And again, the language to define the responsibilities of the parents and the guardians and the school are just revise the wording, but the policy itself is the same as such. And of course, Ms. Call is here, you know, I'd like her to pitch in, if anything.
No, the changes, like you said, very minor wording and cleaning up processes.
I move we accept policy 5312 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks,
for being
Molly.
here.
Thank you, Molly. Board liaison reports. Does anybody have any board liaison reports? Or school and,
Nothing pressing.
In the interest of time.
right, or school and community engagement reports, also probably not much pressing. All right, I am looking for a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.851D to review district threat of violence drills and Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C for the district administrator goal-setting approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I think we need a roll call.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sapersky?
Aye.
Dr. Khan?
Aye.
Dr. Beer?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Sprague?
Aye,
We are in closed session.
thank you.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. School board meeting debriefing. Does anybody have any comments? Okay, Friends of Franklin recognition, future agenda items. Friends of Franklin recognition, curriculum review cycle update, program update approvals. We can read the rest.
The vacuum is
They're
running.
vacuuming.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:27.